Hello, 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 and welcome to Reality NSFW Rewind, Professor Tim Watch's Survivor Africa. I am your host, Karen Eisenberg, and I am joined in this very, very early morning recording. I'm just going to say this right up front. It's 6:30 a.m. for me, and that might not sound so early for normal people, but trust me, for me, it's in the middle of the night. But I am here recording at this ridiculous hour because it was the only way to work this out with both my co-host and our guest. So first of all, Professor Tim, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm very well. I've just finished. I think we're going to be dominated by concepts of teaching today, so we're going to try and smother that, but it will come out. I've just finished a lesson. And then I got a message from you late last night that the time had changed. I thought, oh my god, I'm going to go straight out of English straight into Survivor. But in fact, I'm going straight out of English back into English. I think we're not going to be able to avoid English literature somehow. Anyway, look, very exciting. What have I been doing? Nothing really. I'm still tending my cat and doing Survivor. And I've just watched the latest episode, which is interesting because let me introduce our guest. I'm so sorry.
Oh, this happens sometimes. Tim gets so excited he wants to talk to the guest. So let me just introduce him, and then you two can do your thing. So we are joined today by Nick Iadanza of Survivor 2, right? Survivor. They call that, season, I guess we're going to call this season 1, although it was kind of season 3, Australian Survivor 2016, and then also Australian Survivor All-Stars.
Thank you for having me, Karen and Tim.
Anything else I should be plugging for you, Nick? I was thinking you used to podcast with RHAP. You're not doing so much of that anymore.
Former RHAP podcaster, used to have the Know-It-Alls, where we covered Australian Survivor, New Zealand Survivor, etc. But now I'm just little old me, little old English teacher me, as Tim mentioned. Played. I cannot believe that All Stars was in 2020. I saw some people on Twitter talking about that today, and it's like, that was 2020, even though it feels like it was 6 years ago. Really excited to just chat some old school Survivor. We're all missing a bit of Survivor in our life at this point, but thanks for having me.
On Reality NSFW, we are actually covering season 2 of Australian Survivor for our patrons because we miss Survivor so much. So sorry, Nick, we skipped your season.
We skipped season 1?
We skipped season 1, and you know why? Because we talked about you, and we talked about how Australian Survivor had changed between season 1 and season 2, largely because of you. Right.
Oh, thank you. That's very flattering. I don't know if it's true, but it's very flattering.
I could not put through my listeners through season 1 just to see you. And the finale, which is one of the greatest TV episodes I think ever. I agree. But it's a very long slog to get there, and it's a
brutal slog. It's a brutal slog. If people really want to watch the highlights, I know that there's a few YouTube compilations of my game that you can watch. Get a 20-minute shot in the arm, and then head on over to season 2.
What is so controversial about your game that we weren't allowed to watch it, Nick?
Oh, no, it's not controversial. It's just season 1 was a very long slog. There was some really good gameplay in the first half, and then there was a big plateau in the middle where not much happened. And then it picked up a little bit, and then another plateau, and the end just bang, it's just this amazing finale. But it really rewards you if you're going to sit through the 20 episodes, and many of them are like 70 minutes long. I've had someone, a friend of mine from he's a writer for People in America. He's been watching, and he's been enjoying it. He was not Fishback. Not Fishback. He's been he's been kind of giving me the updates on season 1 as he's been going along, and he's been enjoying it. But you need 20 something plus hours on your hands to get through it all. So skip to season 2. That's the best one. Then skip to season 4. That's great as well. Then 3. then All Stars, then One. That's the official order on how to watch Australian Survivor, but for pure enjoyment factor.
But Nick, Karen has been teasing me and saying that Australian Survivor is more focused on character development than
definitely
just the game.
Definitely. So, absolutely.
It's the sort of thing I might enjoy.
Yeah, no, season 1 is a lot about that. Like, you know, I got plenty about my character and my personality and my backstory and, you know, my family life. Like, a lot of that comes through, as well as the strategy for me. But for many people, it's like character only. And I think that's a refreshing change. And when season 1 aired, everyone felt like it was, it's, you know, we're talking about, you know, Survivor Africa at the moment. People felt like it was this kind of hearkening back to that old school Survivor from a storytelling perspective. Yet it had that new school style of, you know, there were idols and there was, you know, vote splits and flips and advantages, but it did kind of like focus a bit more on the camp life stuff. So that's why a lot of people have found it to be a little bit more refreshing than the breakneck speed that Survivor moves at in season 40.
Right. Yep. Basically, Nick was, I would say, pretty much the only strategist on his season. So this was the issue, is that, yes, character moments and the character arcs that we don't see as much anymore in modern Survivor. I do miss that. And so that was what's so refreshing. The flip side of that first season was, like I said, that there was very little strategy, and 90% of it was brought by Nick, who left before the end, right? I don't want to spoil it. Actually, I guess I just spoiled. Nick didn't win season 1, people. Okay, sorry.
If I didn't win, would I be here teaching? I'd be in the Riviera somewhere.
And if you had won, then the season would have been much better, because the problem was that the strategy disappeared when you did.
Yeah, well, thank you. This is all very flattering. I don't know if I'm going to claim it all, but thank you.
You don't have to. I can say it. You don't have to agree with me. But they were very open about it. It was this whole Australian idea of mateship, right?
Yeah, so Tim, just to kind of catch you up, it was this idea of, like, you know, in Australia, we value the idea of mateship, which is this ideal which has been, you know, hanging around since, you know, the World War I, you know, era of, like, you know, what it means to be a digger and an Australian larrikin. And those are the kind of values that we espouse as a nation. And we don't promote dishonesty. We don't promote, you know, putting yourself ahead of others. We have this thing in Australia called the tall poppy syndrome, where if you stand above the others, you get mown down. And it's this kind of like thing that a lot of people kind of hold as a very positive thing about what it means to be Australian in a reality TV concept, which is like a little, you know, a mixing bowl of all the things which are the antithesis of that. People did not appreciate someone who was willing to kind of like push against any of those values. And people were not willing for people to have fun with it. It became very kind of heavy, because it's like, well, how dare you kind of threaten our sense of what an Australian is. Now, that was just that small collective of people, and that was the narrative the show was trying to push, because they really were trying to differentiate season 1 from the American Survivor, but as a result, it kind of stifled gameplay.
Mm-hmm. And then between season 1 and season 2 was interesting. Then the Australians woke up and realized that this was a game and that was okay. And so when Nick played All Stars, actually, there was somebody from his original season who, even this one person who was really largely responsible, at least on screen, he was the one who kept pushing mateship. He came back to play. So, I mean, Nick, can you explain the shift in terms of people's willingness to play? I don't want to put you on the spot, but it was so striking.
I think what happened was people were very conscious of their, about the way that they would be perceived by the Australian public, who wouldn't stand for people who didn't kind of espouse mateship. And then what they found was, so I remember even in Jury Villa, like, and as we were, you know, the period between, you know, coming home and the show airing, you know, there was a lot of chat amongst the contestants like, oh, Nick, you're going to be hated. Oh, my God, you're going to be hated. And I was like, that's fine. Like, I've got a very strong sense of self. Like, I don't care. And what actually happened was, as the show aired, while obviously there was a section of the population who felt the same way they did, the vast majority of the population and the Survivor fans actually started threw the love on me and not on them. And then they had to do this huge kind of shift in their brain as like, well, hold on a second. This is a different forum. This isn't, you know, being down at the local RSL club sharing a beer after Anzac Day. This is an American arena of reality television, and it's an entertainment product. And I think it took a lot of adjusting for some of them. And then I think what happened was when they went and cast season 2, they probably swung it too far the other direction, where it was like, all right, only strategist. And it made an amazing season, but it kind of like there was a huge, almost like a shift too far, which is why I think then season 3 found the right balance of strategy to mateship, which kind of felt right for their evolution. And then by the time we arrived at season 4, it was just this really solid casting choices that were both interesting and, you know, nationally identifiable as Australian, but also strategic. So I think people saw that shift, were surprised by the perception of the audience, and then kind of came along with it to the point where someone who was, like you said, was very responsible for this mateship idea. One of them also was a guy called Sam, who was a bit of my nemesis in season 1. He actually said to me, a year or so later over a beer, if I ever come back, I'm going to play exactly like you did. And it's like, oh my God, if you could have just come to this epiphany a year ago, you could have saved everyone a lot of trauma. So I guess that's my little, you know, brief analysis of how it worked. Anyway, sorry, I don't mean to take it all up about talking about Australia.
No, but that's why we were so surprised, if you will, because your season, I mean, like I said, it was fun, and obviously we loved you because because he was the strategist, right? You were a snake, right? And apparently in Australia, it's not great to be a snake.
No. I was getting death threats. I was getting I walked down the street and people were like hissing at me, and like, it was just intense. It was funny.
But that's branding. I mean, at that point, that's your catchphrase is just that.
I think what's so funny is the person, like I said, who branded me, the one who was my nemesis. He thought that what he was doing was this thing that was going to like diminish me. It actually kind of like gave myself a character that the show wanted to invest in again for All Stars. So it kind of like bit him in the butt.
Yeah. Yeah, the one thing television doesn't like is dull, and you know, you've got to give TV something to play with.
Yes,
I'm not convinced that it always has to be evil or negative or even strategy, but it has to be substantial.
I agree 100%. The biggest piece of advice I give anyone and I get hit up by Australians and Americans who are going to play Survivor, give me your advice. You know, I want to pop on TV. And I just say, like, you don't have to be like talking strategy, because then you become like a game bot like Spencer. I didn't talk about strategy the whole time, but you can go back and look at all of my confessionals. And while I'm a very animated person, I'm a teacher, I come from a big, loud Italian family, I talk with my hands. I made sure that when I went into those confessionals, I was always smiling. I was always laughing. And you can get away with saying anything if you say it with a smile. And that translates.
Absolutely.
And it translates. And then all my confessionals are shown, even if I'm saying something really dull, because the way I'm saying it, and that is what the show wants. They want someone who's going to tell the story, but in a way that's going to catch someone's eye when they're walking past the living room TV. So that's my biggest advice. You don't need to be evil.
Also have a national advantage insofar as the Australian language is very major key, so you always sound very positive.
Yes.
You know, it's it's not that surprising. It's not that surprising that that Australians move into Hollywood with such ease, because it's such it's so refreshing. There's a tendency on the western side of the UK, and there's a tendency in certain areas of the States to go into a minor key, and it's hell for television or for acting. You know, you want somebody from Australia or you want somebody from Yorkshire, and you know, they're either going to be the greatest hero ever, or they're going to be the greatest villain. It doesn't really make any difference, because anything they say, you're going to listen to, because it's got this sort of sparkle, and it's simply about the pitch.
Someone once said to me, I teach a unit on like language change and like the Australian accent. I teach it to 10. Yeah, and one of the
you should get me on Zoom on one of your lessons, and we'll do. We'll have a go. Because I love the way words change their meaning completely.
Yeah, well, that's
like,
what the unit's about. And one of the
like
we
Nice and Bully.
Bully Beef. Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's a professor who comes on. We like watch. It's like a speech pathologist, and she talks about how the Australian accent is so bright. Just the word bright. She always there's just like a brightness to the way that. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. We're getting distracted. Survivor Africa.
No, we're not that distracted.
It's Survivor Africa, but
it's entirely musical, Nick. You see that's the point.
But Nick. I was just going to say. Nick, and I'm still having these delays. I'm sorry. Nick has a hard out at some point, so let's get into the episode. But don't worry, I'm sure we will find another tangent soon.
Incidentally, can I say before we start how episode 2 was so much easier for me to watch than episode 1 because there was far less Lion King in it, and I'm afraid I got a little heated in the last episode we did because I actually confessed how much I don't like Lion King, and there were so many scenes of the sun rising. I just praying for the sun to set, and for the memory of Elton John to disappear for a few minutes.
But you usually love the nature shots and all of that, Tim. Yeah,
I do.
You were cranky last week, and I wasn't quite sure why.
Well, if you love nature shots, you'll love Australian Survivor because every scene starts with like 5 nature shots.
Nick, I'm already warming to Australian Survivor. Meeting you here, it's like I'm delighted. I'm going to go off and download something and see if I can mug up on Australian Survivor.
There we go. Another person converted. My job here is done. See you later, everybody.
Yeah, this house is clean. There we got a poltergeist reference.
Okay, so I've been wanting to have Nick on for a while. We knew scheduling was going to be an issue, but particularly for this episode, that's one of the reasons we pushed so hard because I needed Nick for this episode because Nick is the world's biggest Jesse Camacho fan. Right? That's what you told me. And
it's a bit of an exaggeration, but definitely.
Yeah. And the fan community, again, I did not watch this live. I came to Survivor a little bit later. My first season I watched live was Vanuatu. So, like I said, I know that she is very, very much beloved. I think I've heard that she's the only player that has like 100% rating on, and now again, this is the problem. It's the middle of the night for me. I can't remember which poll it was, but they polled the fans, and she was the only one who had no negative votes. Well, there you go. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then I probably don't know what I'm talking about. You are the world's biggest Camacho fan. So explain the love, because I mean she's very pretty. She's a deputy sheriff. That kicks ass. I feel like she did get a bad rap, but have I missed anything?
Well, look, like it's really not that deep. Like, and it's gonna sound like I'm being reductive here, but like when I was a 12-year-old boy, like she was. So, like, first of all, I found her very alluring. I had a real thing for Jennifer Lopez, and like here we have another, beautiful Latina, strong woman. She's a police officer. I was very much drawn to her, and she was my look. I watched Survivor live from the very first episode of season 1 as a 12-year-old, and I followed it through, and it's a very common story in the fandom. But I remember even from season. I think season 3 was my first season where I tried to pick a winner. I didn't do that for the first 2, and Jessie was my winner pick. So I think that tells you a little bit about the history of my winner picks across Survivor. But she was my winner pick because
it's a reasonable pick. Like I said, she's 27, which is kind of the perfect age, right? Being really, really young can hurt you, but she's a deputy sheriff, so she's fit, right? And she's not going to take any crap from anybody. So I'm
watching it back now. Yeah, this is the first time I've watched it back. I watched it so many times when I was younger, just on repeat. That I was back in my lounge room as a kid when I was watching it yesterday. But now that I'm an adult, now that I've played Survivor twice, now that we've seen some of these characters pop back again, and not to spoil anything, I definitely felt like she was just that victim of there's an in-group and there's an out-group. And the in-group will always win, even if the in-group is smaller than the out-group. And that is something that will remain true till the end of Survivor time, like in time immemorial. Like it is just, that's the truth. And there was the very clear in-group, this clear nexus of 3 or 4 people, 3 people really, and there was nothing that was going to happen. It was just going to be pick off the people on the periphery, and Jessie just like fell into that. There's nothing that she could have done in the context in which she played Survivor back then. Nowadays, a little bit different, but, we haven't had any of the major shuffles that have occurred since, well, I'm not going to spoil anything, but, at this point that didn't exist. So, I just feel like she was a victim of circumstance, and it really sucked because 12-year-old me was heartbroken.
Well, yeah, no, and by the way, 55-year-old me was heartbroken again, just rewatching this and being reminded that, she not only did she not do anything wrong, but there were several other people on her tribe who did things wrong during the episode, and it didn't matter because they were more popular, right? That this is, I assume, right, that you see the other people, picking up Kim Johnson, right? We start to see how the social dynamics are going to play. And I also do wonder whether it had anything to do with her relationship with Clarence, right?
Yeah, I thought that as well.
Right. They can't vote out Clarence because they need him for the challenges. So what do? You vote off their sidekick. So you put all of that together, and I feel like that is probably what happened to Jessie. But just taking a step back, then let's go to the last episode, because I wanted to know what you think about this, Nick. Do you believe Clarence about with the beans?
Yeah, look, I don't know. I feel like it's hard. It's hard to watch. It's hard to watch Survivor now with a 2020 lens on it. And
I'm so glad you brought that up.
And I don't know. Yeah, I assume that other people thought this as well, but you can't help but think, I don't want to say it, but you can't help but think that Big Tom just had a bee in his bonnet about him being racially different. And whether it's overt, perhaps it's that kind of that subtle racism that we're all becoming, much more open with discussing. And again, not saying Big Tom's a racist, but I'm saying it's just that kind of, this person is different, and it's very easy to kind of make that person the scapegoat. And even if he did do, the wrong thing in Survivor World, the fact that Big Tom was like, I'm going to vote for him again, and just to really teach him a lesson in episode 2, it's like, you don't do that, first of all, in Survivor. Like, you have to in the voting booth, you have to let bygones be bygones, even though I didn't do that, and it bit me in the butt, spoiler. But, it did seem more personal. Did anyone else get that vibe, Tim?
Yeah, no, and we discussed this last week. And on the one hand, on NSFW, we do love Big Tom because Big Tom is one of Johnny's friends, and I have never heard anything more recent about. Everybody loves Big Tom now.
Totally.
But just watching this back, like I said, I don't think anybody would look at Big Tom back in 2002 and say, he was being a racist. But in 2020, we can see that maybe there is something subtle going on here.
And I hate to use the word racist. It's not racist. It's just perceived differences that if you're, like I said before, there's an in-group and there's an out-group. And, Clarence is different because he's the only person like him, just like Jessie is another minority on the team. And Diane was another older lady while Kim Johnson was there. But, it's just this tale as old as time where the people who do not fit, whether someone's being racist, sexist, ageist, whatever, if you don't fit the group, you're not going to make it far.
Well, it seems to me that it's extraordinarily ironic, because I don't think Big Tom is a racist. I don't get that vibe at all. What I get is Clarence is wearing his heart on his sleeve, incredibly vulnerable, and vulnerability doesn't make a good Survivor play, but it makes superb television. So what you've got is this contrast between the charisma of using vulnerability to project your image on the television, which is always a plus, and that's also there with Jessie. So Jessie's sort of lips in today's episode, and talking about the water tasting like tar. and you just think, oh, your heart goes out to her, and you know she's on the way out. So those two things go together, and that's something which I find extraordinary. That here you've got a program which actually routinely dumps the most charismatic people. You know, and what Karen was saying about when you left your show, you know, the show sort of falls to pieces. You know, I'm really impressed you survived so long. But
me too.
if you can survive, and if you can find a way of projecting charisma into the camera and at the same time surviving, then this is remarkable.
Yeah.
And I think one of the problems with season 2 is Tina is very sweet and very lovely, but she's not charismatic. And so you need to get to know her in order to appreciate who she is. That doesn't come across through the camera, whereas Colby, on the other hand, is immensely charismatic. And so all the way through the two seasons I've watched, seasons 1 and season 2, you've got this dichotomy, and you know, this is an opportunity to sort of say, this is the issue. And this is always the issue with reality TV.
Yeah, it's kind of like what I was saying about...
Vulnerability speaks.
Yeah, it's like what I was saying about tall poppy syndrome in Australia. Like, you know, it's the same, you know, the people who stand out get chopped off of reality TV in games like this. And having played twice, you know, I've spent 65 days on a Survivor Island. I know that people think about, well, this person's taking my screen time. Look how they've got bundles of energy. That person's standing up in the morning and, you know, doing something for the camera because they're just a loud, bubbly person. And I'm spending all day in the shelter because I'm tired. Well, how do I make sure this show's about me when I do nothing? I vote out that person, and eventually I'm just by default going to be on the show. And that's kind of that's what happens. And it sucks because it's like we're also making a TV show. There are times where I was like, I need to vote out that person, but that'll suck for the show, right? I don't want to watch that happen. I want to watch that person get the flip. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah, no, and the fact that you were aware that you were making a TV show, again, obviously Jonny was the same way, that going in, right? And he did not know anything about Survivor, but he was an entertainer. So he knew how to give them what they wanted on camera. And again, most people, you know, even people who are familiar with the show, I feel like, right, they're there to play the game. And I understand it's their one shot and they want to focus much more on their chances of winning or getting as far as they can for the money. And they don't think as much about what will make good TV.
Well, put it this way. When I went out there, they said to me, both season 1 and with All Stars, they said, so, Nick, in my first master interview, so, Nick, you know, how are you going to win? And I was like, I'm not going to win. As if I'm going to win. Like, what are the chances? Like, a 1 in 24 chance that I'm actually going to win. Like, if I could somehow make it, you know, 55 days and have people like me and not get bitten by a snake or a spider or like get taken out by a cyclone, like, I'm not going to win. So I put that out of my head. And now I'm just here to have fun and, you know, cause trouble and, you know, do all this kind of stuff. And I don't think that people think about it that way because it's like, no, this is it. Like, I'm the hero of this story and I'm going to win and I'm going to get to the end. And it's like, no, you're not. Like you know, flip a coin and you might, like, 1 in 24 chance. And I think that with that in mind, I would rather just kind of go out and like be, you know, the entertaining version of myself than the I must win, because then it's much easier when you lose to cope with it. Yeah.
But it's also, you know, you need to have the cast, and not everybody in the cast can win. You need to have that mix. And certainly in the show I was in, I had no thought for 1 minute that I was going to win. I knew who I thought was going to win. I was wrong. But you know, that my fault was that I was enabling the other person to win, or the other 2 or 3 people to win, and I was wrong about all of them. But then I didn't know what was going on in the background. And I would be in the same position, I think, in Survivor. I don't think I would see myself winning, but I might see myself as enabling, and I would go out to be as good TV as I possibly could be, and also I would try and avoid being bitten by a snake. Yeah. So who do you think is anticipating your game's in this?
Sorry, say that again.
Who do you think is anticipating your gameplay in this episode?
Sorry, you keep cutting out. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're having some problem with your sound, Tim, that we've never had before. I don't know what's going on.
Is it with me? I'm so sorry.
Yes.
We'll
talk about it after the show, but hopefully we will. If this keeps happening, I'll have you leave and come back in. Maybe we should do that now. Why don't you just leave and then click on the link and come back in? Sometimes that's helpful.
You're out of here.
I'm so sorry. It's like
no, it's fine. Let me remove you, and I'll see you in a minute. Hi.
We voted him out.
We voted him out. Oh wait, he has to. Okay, let's see.
I have to go. I have to go. Leave.
Oh, now he's gone. All right. So that gives you a taste of Tim, right?
I love it. I want the whole buffet. I like the taste.
Yeah.
Serve me the meal. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me just ask you. So we talked about the fact that Tom voted for Clarence again. I did just want to make the point that back then, I mean, I'm not making this point for you, I know you know, but for the listeners, back in these days, the votes actually counted in terms of breaking ties, right? So that this is not just Tom, kind of throwing away a vote to make a point. He's really making Clarence's path in the game more difficult.
Yep.
I don't know if you thought of that. But,
no, definitely. And I think that is, and I wonder if he thought of that. Or if, he doesn't seem like someone who maybe, from what we know of him in his history of Survivor, as someone who would think about that. But again, it's just one of those things that it's just like, again, you're making someone on the out even more difficult to ever try and get back in, which is unfortunate.
Right. So we'll get into the episode. So the notes I have is Samburu is cold, then they are hot. Right. Clearly, it's very, very difficult. It's 120 degrees. Yeah, Tim, I should ask you this. Sorry, Nick, let me ask you this, because you played on seasons where, they were beach seasons, right? You were on the water. So you got hot, but at least you had the water as an option. How would you have fared could you have survived in Africa, given the heat, the lack of water?
It's funny you say that. It's actually rare that I went in the water on Survivor, and I was on a beach for 65 days, and it was very rare because I always felt like there was more to do. Like I was always wanted to hustle, or I wanted to go make bonds or go look for an idol, and I reckon I could count them on one hand the times where I actually lazed in the water to keep cool. But if I didn't have it and I was playing in an Africa season, I think I'd be like, oh, if there was water here, I'd be in it every single day. But it's definitely a nice reprieve when you have that kind of it's so hot, and it's more about the communal bonding. You can suggest, let's all go to the beach, because no one then can buzz around and get firewood, and no one can go look for an idol. So when everyone goes and sits in the water together, it actually is really good communal time where you're making bonds, and the game actually does go on pause. It's very rare in Survivor, because even when you're sitting around the shelter, someone's kind of looking around, is there an idol in the shelter? Or and it's very rare that if you're out in the ocean sitting there in a group, that the producers will pull you for an interview, because they think that this is, potential content for people talking. So it actually has game implications. Not having that. It's kind of like when, so we renovated our house and our kitchen was ripped out for a long time. The kitchen is like a natural congregation point in a house. And in Survivor, it's like you congregate in the water or you congregate around the fire. And the fire is right there in the middle of everything. So it kind of reduces the options of where you can go. And in Africa, in those little, what are they called? Bomas? What do they call them?
Yeah. Boma.
Yeah. where are they going? They're going nowhere. Like that. I actually think that this season, while it actually looks great and it's very exotic and it's, a great thing to say, oh, we went to Africa and like there were lions, but it stifles the gameplay significantly because you don't have many options of where to go off to talk.
Right.
That's a good point. Everybody can overhear you.
Yeah. Right. Well, you hear that when Lindsay goes off and hears Silas and Frank talking, right? Like,
Yep. Yeah, but even the fact that like when they go to get water, they all have to go together because normally, again, that's what you do. It's like, oh, I'm going to go get some water. You want to come with me? And that gives you an opportunity to talk. Whereas, like I said, you're all stuck in the MoMA. And like you say, I guess the only thing is you're going to the bathroom. I mean, that might be the one time you get out, or they must have a spot in the MoMA.
Yes,
right. Even
they must. Yeah. One of the rules in Australian Survivor is if you say you're going to the toilet. If you say you're going to go relieve yourself, no one's allowed to come with you because that is that is when the cameras know not to follow you. And like, you're not allowed to say, oh, I'm going to, crack a coconut or whatever it is, and then go off and find an idol. You get in serious trouble. So you can't even say like, oh yeah, or I don't know about American Survivor, but you can't even say, oh yeah, I'm going to go relieve myself. Come with me. Like, yeah.
No, but it makes sense because they just won't send a camera person with you.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas if you tell them you're going and then you go find an idol and they don't have footage of that, that makes them unhappy.
Right. Very, very, very unhappy.
Very unhappy. Yeah. Although, it's funny, we talked about, especially on Borneo and even a little bit in Australian Outback, that they were missing some big moments. They fixed that pretty quickly, but in the first couple of seasons, there were issues where the camera just wasn't where it was supposed to be. And it was so jarring for us. We're used to modern Survivor where the camera is always exactly where it needs to be.
Well, it's like Survivor New Zealand that doesn't record at nighttime. So they'll be like, oh, we had this hellish night. No one slept, and they cut to them in the morning and they all look like dead, but they don't even have like a 2-second frame of them huddling in the storm. And it's very, very jarring as the audience because like, what do you mean? It's sunny. Everything looks great.
It's funny. I never noticed that. We actually had Lisa, from Survivor New Zealand but that didn't come up. It literally never occurred to me, or I didn't notice that they actually were not showing us the actual. I mean, I only watched it once. I didn't rewatch anything like that. But interesting. Yeah, I guess just for budgetary reasons or whatever.
Yeah.
They don't film at night.
But there's a lot of night photography in today's episode.
Yes. No, we've never.
American does. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're starting to see the beginnings of some real strategy in both of the tribes, right? So we see already, Frank is still Frank. He's still military. He's still bossy. But we start to see a split that is not surprising, but we actually see it, that it's going to be Frank, Dr. Carl, Linda, and T-Bird, right? The older people against Lindsay, Brandon, Little Kim, and Silas. So we're just kind of setting that up. We haven't seen much happening yet. We get to the reward challenge. And this is something that I feel like we used to see on Survivor. I think, have we seen this on Australian Survivor also, where it's basically an obstacle course with these logs. You have to run through with the logs, then you have to.
Yeah, I've done.
Right. Is that one that you did? So the one thing I was wondering with this, I'm sorry, Nick, go ahead.
No. So ours was a modified version of it in All Stars. One element at the beginning of the challenge was the crisscross. Then you pick up the logs from a box and stack them. But it was a puzzle. So the pieces were all different lengths and the holes were all different lengths. So you needed to figure out like this one looks like it goes there, but it actually is the very first one. And so it wasn't like you take this one and put it there, then that one and put it there. So I did a modified, much more interesting version of this challenge.
Right. Yeah. But my reaction watching this, and I know Tim is always, very, very concerned, about people getting hurt. I was looking at this and I was just thinking like if they I would just be afraid that like they would drop the log on somebody when they're trying to put it in the hole.
Yes.
Well, I don't think Survivor Africa cares. Spoiler, in a couple of episodes, someone's going to get crushed by a boulder. So there's a giant boulder coming. These sticks are the least of the show's worries.
Fair enough, but again, it just surprised me because again, in 2020, I don't think that the network would let you run this challenge.
I agree. And what I found funny was the person who climbs to the top, there's no handrail. Like when I did it, we had to climb up. There was a handrail.
Really?
Yeah, there's a handrail on the side so that you didn't fall off. Yeah.
Yeah, because I did think of little, that shot of little Kim, standing up on the top of it, and I'm like, again, I'm like, it's the mother thing, but I'm like, you're going to fall down, and possibly fall on somebody.
Yes, but even going up those steps was dangerous enough.
Yeah,
right. But no, a little bit of danger is okay, but like we'd rather have people not die. Right.
I was worried that the steps would be in the wrong order. And
they were for us.
right. They really
yes, exactly.
challenging. Yeah, they had So in this version, you just have to build the staircase, but it's very clear. You start with the shortest one and you bring it up. Right, which where in Nick's version of it, right, that they drilled the holes at different depths.
Yeah.
So you really had to play, and then you're also but it makes it even, I would argue, even more physical, because then you have to physically move those logs around.
Yeah.
So you could put a little log in a long hole and lose the log.
No, they all had like a top so that they wouldn't go down.
I see.
But you didn't know like how far down they would go. Like some of them would have like that much poking out, some would have that much, some would have that much. So yeah,
I see.
They were smaller logs, and they weren't as like tree trunks like those ones.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's funny to see the older challenges, which like are very much cut and dry. Like someone can be leading the whole time, and there's never an equalizer. I find that really. You forget about that when you go back and watch these old seasons. That it was pretty telegraphed from the beginning who was going to win. Yeah,
right. So Samburu does win, right? We see little Kim up at the top, and so we go back to camp with Boran. And Big Kim apologizes, right? Because we did see. Again, we have more old people falling down. We talked about this last week when you had Mario Lanza. He calls this his podcast of Africa, old people falling down. Because once again, we have so we have more old people falling. We see Big Kim falling, right, where they're trying to keep up with the rest of the tribe with the logs, and she apologizes. She says, I know this puts a target on you. And again, so this is one of the reasons I would have just assumed, right, if I were watching this for the first time, that Big Kim is a goner, right? Because she's older, she's a woman, and she is clearly, in this case, holding them back in challenges. But
she's white, Karen.
She's white, and she has bonded with some of the guys in the tribe, because I think Tom's exact quote was, "You had a boo-boo, but I'm proud to be on your team." Excuse me. You had a boo-boo, meaning that, right? Yeah, you fell, but I still like you. So
can I let everyone in on a secret as to what is the most cringeworthy part of playing Survivor?
Please.
Go on.
When someone stuffs up at a challenge and you're going to have to sit through the 15-minute apology tour when you get back from a challenge, it's just going to be this thing that it's like going through the motions. It's like getting up and brushing your teeth. It's an inevitability that you're going to have to come back and sit there, and that person's going to apologize, and everyone's going to be like, "Oh my God, don't be silly. Like, we win as a tribe, we lose as a tribe." And it's just this like, 20-minute like fake thing that you're just like, "Oh God, can we just like speed this up so we can go and strategize?" And like, because we all know this is fake. Like we don't like we're 20 years into this show. we don't need this, but it happens. It happens every time, and everyone just sits there as like, "Yeah, oh no, it's it's so funny. It's so cringe."
Have you ever been on the receiving end of this, Nick?
No, to be like, and I'm very thankful, because I went into Survivor thinking that the challenges would be where I would really stuff up, and I never had to come back and do the apology. So
thank God.
Yeah. And I was dreading going into All Stars. I was like, "Oh, I'm going to have to do that apology thing," because I somehow I managed to evade it in season 1. But
no, but in this case, I think Tom was probably being genuine.
Agreed.
Like I said, because again, this is 2002 Survivor, not 2020 Survivor. But I wanted to flag this. So we're talking about being different. do older people seem to do better in earlier Survivor because there are more of them, right? Tom is also in his 40s, right? So that having somebody who's in her 50s, you know, falling down is not. You know, so would people do better in Survivor if there were more than one or maybe two on a tribe? And I think the answer
absolutely
is yes. Yeah,
absolutely, because the tribe mates don't want to, you know, promote a rhetoric that's going to then potentially come back and get them. And this is something, and I won't use names, but on All Stars, this is what happened with, you know, a young small girl who was on my tribe who, you know, stuffed up, and then the other young small girls refused to let that narrative flow because they knew that next week it was probably going to bounce back on them. But that's because there was 3 of them, right? You know, when there's only one old lady, like no one's coming to her defense because it doesn't matter for them. So I think this is where casting really has a part to play, and it's age, it's gender, it's race, it's, you know, it's lots of things.
Yeah. Yeah. So then we see they're going to get water, and we get Tom saying, when you have 2 freeloaders, it hurts. Right.
Who was the second?
I assume it was Jesse and Clarence, was my guess.
Yeah, I guessed that it was Jesse as well, but then that made me realize
but at that point, but at that point, Jesse isn't drinking water anyway, is she?
Yeah, right. But then it makes me think that there was more to the story that we weren't getting, that she was much more on the outs before that because of perceived, you know, not contributing. You don't call someone a freeloader just from being sick. So I feel like she got stuck with the I was sick narrative when there's probably much more to it about her just not meshing with the group because of either her behavior or their, you know, biases.
I do think there are some people, and I mean, I'm not sure if this is true of Tom. I have a feeling that, you know, if the different tribes were different and Frank were there, I do think Frank might just look at Jesse, you know, being dehydrated and saying, like, you know, calling her a freeloader, like, you know, suck it up, and it's a military thing. Right. So, but I don't think, like, that was my question, is that kind of where Tom is going on this? Was it really just that they're very, very angry at her for being sick? Which obviously is ridiculous, but is that, you know, that there is this, certainly some people do this where, like, you know, I can do it, right? I can suck it up. It's Survivor. Right. But I was trying to figure out, but you're right, there's probably something else going on also. And I was thinking of talents. Yeah.
There was the exchange with Ethan, and that wasn't very pleasant, actually, really, was it? You know, where he says, would it be a good idea if you ate something or you drank something, or I can't remember what it was, it stimulated your taste, right. and then he sort of walks off. You know, it's fairly heartless. And there I was warming to Ethan, and I was thinking, you know, I like Ethan. I'm not so sure now.
I agree, and that struck me as something that I didn't notice the first time. Because you just, in 2001, you buy into, oh, well, Ethan's the nice one, right? Ethan's the good one. But he was like, no, well, I'm just trying to help. Like, you know, he's giving her sass back. Like, she can't eat. Yeah. So it makes me think like that, plus Tom's comment was that there was more to the undercurrent about her spot in the tribe than anything other.
Could it have something to do with her career?
I don't know, Karen.
I don't know. I mean, if you're talking about, so if we go through the tribe, I'm trying to think, is there anybody on the tribe who's going to have a problem? If anybody's going to have a problem with a cop, it's going to be Clarence, right? I mean, just talking stereotypes, right? I have no reason to think that Tom or Kim or Ethan or Lex.
Well, what about Lex? He's very kind of anti-establishment.
Right. I was going to say he might be the one, right? That might have.
I'm not so much thinking that. I'm thinking more about the character that she would have developed as a deputy sheriff. You know, she's used to giving orders. She's used to being obeyed. She's used to being in control, and and suddenly the rug's pulled from under her. She's so very much not in control. Does she actually have anything else to offer?
It could also be one of those. It could also be one of those scenarios where it's like, oh, and on day one, you're like, oh, you're a deputy sheriff. All of a sudden, your expectations are up here of what they can do, their toughness. And then when they don't meet that, it's like, okay, well, you're an automatic failure based on the metric that I provided in my mind, based on what you can bring me to survive out here in this harsh environment. So you kind of create a rod for your own back. Yeah.
Precisely.
Yeah, because again, I'm thinking in terms of Frank because he's, further in this direction, but it could be true of the other people on the tribe, possibly again, especially the older ones, that, she's law enforcement, right? She should, then she should really be able to deal with the conditions, and they just might not have a lot of patience for the weakness.
Yeah, you see, and Frank has an advantage because he wasn't set out as a military person. He was set out as a telephone man.
Right.
So his military thing is a revelation. Oh, you're that as well. You can repair my phone and bomb the hell out of the neighbours I don't like. I'm in a win-win situation. Virgin doesn't have a patch on you.
That's very good.
Virgin Media, you only talk to who you want to. Bang.
I had a question. I did have a question though, also for Nick. As a survivor, and I know that what was your water situation like? Because with Jessie, I am very sympathetic to her because on the one hand, obviously you can't contribute if you're dehydrated and you can't eat or drink, but she says, I don't know if I could drink that. Did your water taste like elephant crap?
I actually have a story for this, and that is that because I've watched Survivor Africa so many times as a kid, Lex's comment is just how you you'll know this from watching a lot of Survivor, like someone's comment just sticks in your head, and they're not even like the big comments, I remember it from Survivor Thailand, like Jan saying, "I found the dead bat over here." Just there's a little line that sticks in your head. And Lex's line of, if you don't boil your water, you get amoebic dysentery and you end up puking and crapping your guts out, right? That's just a line that for 20 years has been imprinted in my head. Fast forward to 2016, I go out to play Survivor. They tell you beforehand, you should boil your water. Okay, great. I get out on that beach and I'm like, guys, we cannot drink the water straight from the well. We have to boil it because you end up puking and crapping your guts out. And I have Lex's voice going over it in my head. I'm like, I'm not going to be Jessied out of this game. I'm not going to be name redacted for Tim later on, like a couple, I am going to boil this water. And in my tribe, in the beginning of season 1 for Australian Survivor, I was the lone voice who was like, we're going to boil the water, guys. And everyone was like, nah, let's just drink it out of the well. And I'm like, no. You don't know what happened to Jessie. I refuse.
Did Jessie drink bad water? Is that part of her problem?
Well, I think that all water in the Africa water is bad because Big Tom's stepping in it with his feet and then fishing it out of the thing, and I don't know, that all sounds pretty gross. So,
but doesn't it purify it completely when you boil it?
But see, I thought she got dehydrated was her problem, and from the first day, just with the walking in and all of that. Because I've had this. I actually had this in 2020, where once you get to a certain level of dehydration, you can't keep water down.
Yes. So the reason why she's not drinking it is because when you boil the water, so we had a cast iron pot, and that's all we had. So one cast iron pot, you fill it up with water. It's enough to fill up 2 drink bottles. You need so much fire, so much wood to keep it going, to boil it. It needs to be a rolling boil for a certain number of time. Then it needs to cool before you can put it in the water bottle. So that then needs another hour. And to speed up the process so that you can then boil the next one so that people aren't waiting for water, you usually put them in hot. And then the cast iron leaches into the water. And then the water, drinking hot boiled water from a cast iron pot in Survivor is disgusting. It is disgusting. And I think that we lasted 2-3 days in Samoa before everyone was like, nope, we're not doing this anymore. And I couldn't be the one that was like, no, we need to keep doing it, because then I would need to, basically monopolize the pot. So I just eventually, and I was the last person of all 24 people to actually drink from the well. And that's why when you watch episode 1, you see me like licking palm leaves, because I was refusing to drink it. So I can understand what she's saying. Lex ruined me with that quote, but it does taste disgusting. And I think that's what it is. Not that it was anything else. It's just the boiled water is gross.
Right. That'll do it.
But Lex's quotation is memorable because he pauses at some point in his explanation. It's quite hesitant, and it's very distinctive. It's very distinctively phrased, or at least pronounced. It's as if he's repeating something he's read rather than this information.
Or been told at the survival training 2 days earlier.
Or probably been told again and again and again. He's sort of, it's like half of it comes across like a mantra. But I mean, he's also used to start this episode where he starts talking about voting and about teaching parents a lesson. So he's I don't know whether he's going to develop character, but to me he hasn't got very much character. He's making this little gnomic pronouncements. He's like a sort of voice of God. Does he get character? Can you tell me, Karen? Am I allowed to know?
We're talking about Lex. Character? Yeah, we talked about Lex. I understand he hasn't shown us much yet, but yes, Lex has character.
Okay, fine.
Yeah,
fine.
He speaks.
But I mean, I'm quite happy. Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot how intense
with his voice.
He was.
Sorry.
No, I just forgot how intense he was. He was just very, very intense. There's an intensity to him, which I think is enabled from his comfortable position in the tribe. If I think that exacerbates the way he speaks.
Yes. He doesn't have a lot of competition really. I mean, he just has Ethan and Tom in the as other men to sort of compete with. And Ethan's playing the charmer, Tom's playing the bully, and Lex is playing sort of, the sage, I suppose.
That's a reasonable.
Yes, it is
about what's going on at this point in the game.
But in 2001, Tom was not the bully; he was the good old boy. But in 2020, he's the bully. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
In 2020, he's the bully. I see. Exactly. No, it's he does come across as a bully. I'm afraid, really, it's I'm saying this as somebody who shares a goating instinct with him. He's my brother in the goating community, and I'm sorry to see a fellow goater as a bully.
I have a feeling, like I said, Tom is also a big character. I think he already in the next episode, you may start to change your opinion on Tom. I mean, like I said, he does behave in this slightly, very forceful way.
Yes. Well, I don't take a 21st century approach to bullies. I think I acknowledge they exist, and I think my job is to convert them, not to reprimand them, because you reprimand a bully, you are a bully yourself. Ideally, hug a bully, go around. Don't bother hugging trees; they can't answer back. Not a bully, hug a bully, and then maybe the world is going to become a better place. They just want attention. Tom wants attention. You can see it. He's not got any goats around. He has to learn to interact with the human community.
Is the bully version of a goat farmer a Billy?
Absolutely, yeah. I think it would be.
And
you've got my goat.
And just before we move away from all the shots,
stop kidding around, Tim. Come on.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Sorry, you guys are. I'm way too tired to banter. That's the problem.
Yeah, we're punning. We're punning over here. Yeah.
And I am not punning because,
just a little bleating. It's not a problem.
But we had
actually, I do have a horrible goat story to tell, if I may.
Please.
Because when I was out in Greece and milking goats, the joy of milking a cow is the cow leans on you, you lean on the cow, and the milk comes out. When you're with a goat, the goat's much smaller, so you have to sort of pull the other between the back legs and then try and sort of milk it that way. The goat relaxes like the cow, and when the cow relaxes, lots of other things come out as well. But in the case of the cow, you're positioned at the side of the cow, not at the back of the cow, so you don't get covered. When you're with a goat, literally, just the stuff just pops straight into the same bucket that you're milking into. So I said to one of my goat herder friends on my mountainside in Greece, in the Peloponnesus, I said, "What do you do when the goat sort of poops in the milk?" And he said, "Huh," and put his hand in and scooped it out. And I thought, I'm never drinking goat's milk again.
Yeah,
and I have.
My daughter drinks goat's milk formula, but after this, she
tell
will
her, tell her where it's been. And the Greek word which is relevant to this conversation is skata.
Is that where the whole scatological comes from?
Absolutely, scatological as opposed to eschatological. Yeah, absolutely. And Nick, which part of Italy is your family from?
I was going to say, because in Italian it's like the colloquialism is scadare. So
yeah.
The south.
You're from the south, from Reggio Calabria.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it well. Before I found myself in Greece, I was in the south of Italy, from Napoli down down to the south.
My father's from Naples, from a small town near Naples, and my mum's from Calabria.
Oh, splendid! Because I spent a very, very nice time in Naples, looking after Squinizzi, street children, and learning the art of pickpocketing, which I never quite mastered, sadly.
Isn't that what Squinizzi means? That's what my nonni used to call me that, like, playfully. Now I know she was calling me a street kid. Oh my God!
She was calling you she was ragamuffin, that sort of thing. Yeah, but they were just wonderful because they were they went right down in age to about 5. And they were just running around the place and sort of huddling together at night in garages, and they had families. They could identify where they came from, but the families were just too poor to do anything, so they sent them out onto the street, and they became extremely adept at what they did.
My people.
And well, I was very impressed. It was the first time in my life that I realised there were different moralities in the world, and you can't impose one set of values on another. You've got to accommodate what's there.
Just not on Survivor.
I was the visitor. I think in Survivor as well. This is the point. You've got these tribes, and they have their values. And I think if you're not dealing with the values that you're presented with, you're not dealing with reality as you find it, then you're going to fail.
Mateship.
It's and the problem is you've got 2 audiences, and you were very much aware of it, because you're a storyteller, because you're aware of drama. But some people, I think, were not aware that they also have this television audience as well as the audience of the people in the tribe and the opposing tribe. You've got. Yeah, I think you've got 3 audiences, and then in the American system, you've got the Jeff Probst character, who I think is very dominant, and he's becoming more and more dominant as this episode. He is so slick. I mean, I don't think I would like to meet him on a dark night, really.
Have you seen any other Survivor, like modern Survivor?
No, Nick. I'm a complete reality TV virgin. I found myself on a show. Yeah. And I'd never watched any reality TV at all.
Right. I think that what would be really interesting is like, because you're going to have to wait, quite a while to see where it is now. I think it would be quite interesting to actually watch one episode of season 40. I don't know, well, maybe not 40 because that'll ruin it, but like at least an episode of 39 or something like that. And to see the contrast, I think you will actually be a little bit blown away. I'm not saying in an amazing way, but I think like you'll be quite shocked by that juxtaposition.
Yeah. Compare and contrast, discuss.
And I have a feeling he might not necessarily enjoy it because, again, the things that Tim really likes, like the character moments, are pretty much gone. In many, some seasons have more character than others, but you never have a situation where you feel like you get to know almost all of these people. On a good season now, you'll get to know 3 or 4 people.
It's not the only thing I like, Karen.
No, but it's important.
The two pillars on which I base sort of all my television appreciation are development of character, so I can see an arc developing. That's basic drama craft, and the other one is the skill of production. And what you've hinted at is that the skill of production gets greater as the drama arc decreases. I could live with that. What I couldn't live with is cheap production and poor character development, just simply to do a game.
Well, cheap production you don't have to worry about, but in terms of character development, yes, there is going to be less of it as you get deeper into American Survivor.
One of the interesting things I find about sort of when I find myself talking about TV is people assume that simply because I've got sort of interest in academia, I really like quiz shows. I can't think of anything more boring. Quiz shows are cheap television with no character development at all. It does. And when you listen to some of the questions, you just think, okay, some of those questions are sort of interesting, and then they throw in sort of, how old are you? And that's the one the person gets wrong. And you get a little bit of this in Survivor because, how do you do a quiz? You follow the technique which is already laid down. It's not knowledge.
It's funny you say that because I love reality TV. I can watch any reality TV except the dancing and the singing shows. And there's nothing against them. They're just not for me, right? But I think that it's because there is none of that character development. I can watch like a really, really shitty, VH1, some, cheap as celebrity love dating show, reality show. I can watch that over watching, big production, The Voice, The
Voice is a non-starter for me.
Because you at least get like a little bit like a kernel of truth about who people are through like, who they are at their foundation, who they are at their core, what motivates them, what is the thing that makes them kind of like strive to be on TV. At least you get that. You don't get that in those other shows. So that's why I love reality TV. And like, I will defend reality TV today. I'm a huge fan of like the Real Housewives and things like that because I just love watching how human beings interact in zany situations. Because at the end of the day, even people who are like seasoned, battle-hardened reality TV stars, they, there's a kernel of humanity in everything and interaction that they do that you can kind of trace back to some psychological need that they have for community, for self-validation, and I find it endlessly fascinating. And that's why Survivor has captivated me for 20 years.
Well, my problem with reality TV is not what's happening on television, it's what happens off television and what happens afterwards. And that I keep bashing at that one. There's a certain amount of manipulation that you see on television, but you want to make a story. You want to create, you want to structure a story. And I think, reality TV, when you look at some of the more bizarre works of Dickens and Thomas Hardy, that is reality TV. They're just putting down whatever they see in the street that day because that's going to pay for their meal in the evening. And they find that there is some sort of, they impose some sort of structure on this. And of the two, Dickens is the master because he's able to reproduce conversation accurately, and he doesn't even have to resort to all those strange sort of peculiar spellings of words to try and reproduce Yorkshire dialect. It's easy to read. it's comfortable, it's popular, and sometimes sometimes there's a desire to avoid the popular because it's popular, and I think one tends to forget that the sweet wrappings of today are the history of tomorrow, and that is what reality TV is. And what worries me so much is production is so obsessed with controlling what it's created, that it and doing it as cheaply as possible, that it's ruining what will otherwise be, the great form of entertainment.
It's hard. It's hard to get lightning in a bottle when you're making the lightning and the bottle. Like you're supposed to just be creating the bottle, and then now reality TV producers they want to know how bright that lightning is going to be.
Exactly.
They're just supposed to provide the bottle.
Just need to provide.
We could talk about reality TV all day, I think, but I've got 20 more minutes.
That's right.
I'm so sorry.
Nick has a heart out here. So now we'll go back to Samburu strategy. So T-Bird is interesting. T-Bird actually likes the younger people. And again, if you get to know T-Bird during this season and what she's like right now. Teresa. Yeah, she is, in the Survivor community. On the show also. I think this is a nickname that she must have had before the show, and this is what everybody calls her. But my point is that she actually, even though she's around 40, she feels more comfortable with the younger people, but she thinks that on her tribe, given the people involved, the stronger side is going to be with the older people. Right. And I can understand why you would think that, Frank and Dr. Carl, they're the hard workers. And then they also really, so they're split 4-4. And Frank has the idea to pull Silas in, right? That he would be that they could work with the most. So Nick, do you think was Silas a good choice?
I think he was, because like Brandon and Lindsay are non-starters, and you don't really get much about Kim at this point. But I feel like he is the one that you can appeal to the most. And I wonder if it's because of what's happening on the other tribe. It's very clear. I think it would be very clear where the nexus of power is in the other one. And I feel like the person that you could very easily bring over to that is like, hey, do you want to hang out with Ethan? And Lex. Like, these are people that, like, you will be brought into their fold. If in the future, if we stay together, those people are going to be there at the end, and we're going to get along. Like, if you go with them, it's not going to be as a smoother transition. So I think that that's probably what they were pitching. I also, like, I don't know about you, but I always, whenever I watch a season, I have like the instant reaction of, this is a tribe I don't like, and this is a tribe I do like. Did you have that, Karen, like when you used to watch back in the day? Yeah. Do you even have that now?
Certainly, sometimes it happens, sure.
Yeah,
I Samburu, like on both sides, but you're right in terms of which tribe I like better. Yeah, sure. At this point, I like Baran better.
Yes, Samburu, just even back then as a 12-year-old, I was just like, I do not like any of these people. Like, I didn't like any of them, like, except T-Bird, and like not enough to care.
Really?
So, like,
didn't you like Brandon?
Not really, not yet. Anyway, not yet. And that those thoughts are usually kind of like created in the first few episodes, and then I find them hard to overcome.
You see,
like in Borneo, like I was a very big Tagi person, even though I know a lot of audience members were very big Pagong people. But I like older people. I like older people.
And you like strategy. That's why you liked Tagi better.
Yeah.
But I disagree with you about why Silas is an obvious choice. It seems to me to be Brandon would be the obvious choice because he's personality. Whereas Silas is just another pretty bartender.
The contempt in Brandon's eyes whenever Frank talks. I can.
Yes, it's because they've had a confrontation, and Frank has kept that one going. So Frank has alienated that option. But if Frank were clever, that would have been the person to go to, because Brandon, I think, has got the ability to gather momentum behind him.
Yep. Tim, there's one issue. Yeah, Tim, there's one issue that if you haven't picked up on it, Frank is pretty conservative, and Brandon is pretty gay. Those two were never going to work together.
Yeah, well, that's Frank's problem.
I agree with you, but I'm just saying. He
just needs to grow up, and he needs to reflect on the foolish moments of his youth that maybe he wants to forget. But really, he's the one with the issues.
Oh, I absolutely agree. We spoke at last time about Rudy saying there's more of them than there are of me,
and
right?
Silas,
and Frank does not get that. Yes,
and Silas is not a leader. That's the point.
You don't think Silas is a leader?
He thinks he's a leader.
He thinks he is, but he's not. He's a bartender. He's not a leader. He's somebody who keeps people occupied.
I did a quick Google when I was watching the episode. Do you know what Silas is up to nowadays?
Yeah, we talked about it. And it's worse than I thought. It's worth. We talked about it a little bit last week that he had been accused of rape. I did a little bit of searching. It's a lot worse.
I'd forgotten about that. I'm so sorry.
There are accusers in 3 different states.
I wasn't leaping on the bandwagon against Silas there at all. Right. I'd forgotten what you'd said.
But the reason when I was doing some research, I was reminded, I had forgotten about this, that last year, so this is mid 2019, at Hearts of Reality, which we've talked about this before. It's a big charity event down in Florida. Jesse was there, and so was Silas. And Johnny and Matt actually interviewed both of them.
Okay.
So, and this was Silas's first ever charity event. Like, I think Jesse had actually brought him. And he was talking about, it was fun. He'd really kind of not been in the survivor community much for 15 years. So that was his first and unfortunately his last charity event, because I don't think we're going to see him again. But he seemed fun, and Jesse looks fantastic. If I had the tech ability, I would have played it. She actually recorded an intro in Spanish for that previous podcast that she did. But she looks really exactly the same. She sounds the same. She's fantastic.
Well, she was in movies. I went on her IMDb. She was in 20 different movies.
Oh, wow. I had no idea. Yeah. I mean, because back in the day, all of these people became famous. We talked about this for the other.
Well, it actually was all the way up until 2016. I was surprised. Yeah.
She really had a career as an actor. Amazing. Yeah. No, but like I said, I have to ask her about her skincare regimen because it's been 18 years and she literally looks the same.
Not her chapped lips. No, don't ask her about what she used to.
So
the lips adhered. Yeah.
Yeah. So she doesn't. She doesn't do any more Survivor series, or
no. She has not been back. Generally, people are much more likely to be brought back the longer they last. I mean, there have been a few people who have gone pre-merge and have been brought back, both for All Stars and later. But generally, the rule is you're not going to see somebody unless they at least make the jury. So, we talked about Silas. Oh, yeah, besides being rapey, he also beat up a bouncer, broke 5 ribs.
He's very convincing with his trust me. I must say, I would be I wouldn't be entirely on my guard.
The way she was looking at him, much.
Yeah, looking up at him, and it was a Madonna moment. Tremendous. He has a lot of charisma, but he's not a leader. This is the point, and Brandon, I think, probably is.
But I don't know that Frank wants a leader. Frank wants a reliable
Frank
vote.
Wants to lead.
Frank wants to lead. He doesn't want Silas to lead.
No, and the other question is, Carl. Who is Carl?
Dr. Carl,
a dentist.
Carl doesn't. Yeah, well, that's a bit of a sort of disturbance in the first place. You think a marathon man. Does it hurt? Is it safe? It's I don't know. I don't want to do dentists. Some of my best friends have been dentists.
If you drop me in the middle of that tribe, the people I would not be able to stand. Carl, Frank, Linda, Lindsay, Silas. Those 5 people would just I wouldn't want anything to do with them.
you and I would be on the same page there.
I would be right there with Brandon, right there with Teresa.
Teresa.
And, like, that is like
just lock in.
Just like no one else talk to me.
Yep. And I think I would be in the same position. Yeah, 100%. Whereas on the other side, you know, I think I could make an effort to deal with most of the people on the other side. And Tom and I would get on eventually. We have a common subject. So you know, and he just needs to be loved. He's missing his goats, and the rest. Ethan, I think we could tame Ethan. Kelly, yeah, Kelly's okay.
I loved Kelly. I was a huge Kelly fan.
Yeah,
I've yet to discover Kelly, so I just don't think that she's a problem.
I love what she said. I couldn't chug a beer in college, and I can't chug blood out here. That's such a good line.
Oh, the blood challenge.
Yeah, we've got about 10 more minutes with Nick. So I was going to let's get into the immunity. No, but I wanted to at least get to the immunity challenge. So Nick, right? So you already flagged one of the great lines there. Anything else? What about the immunity challenge? Do you think we should talk about?
I was like waiting for the shot, which I will never forget, of Linda going, like that shot is like permanently burned into my brain. And the other thing that was like really burned into my brain that I remembered as soon as I saw, oh yeah, this is the blood drinking challenge, was like the Samburu warrior called Charles. Like that was just something that spun me out when I was a 12-year-old. And when I went to Africa for my honeymoon in 2017, and we went and hung out with Samburu warriors. We're in the middle of the Masai Mara. I had my Survivor Africa buff on, and when we met the people, I was like, please, I want to meet a Charles. I want to meet a Charles. But they had equally like delightful, like anglicized names. But
that's what I was going to say. That's their American name. And as somebody who lives, I have a Hebrew name that I don't use, you know, socially. But again, I live in a community where many people have, you know, the name they use every day, and then their kind of American name that's easy to pronounce and spell. So I assume the same thing with Charles, that, you know, his mother did not name him Charles at birth. Well, then again, you know, but he wants to interact with the Americans. It's easier to have a name that they know. The other thing also with this cow, that they said the cow has been tested and quarantined.
Corona.
I know it's such a 2020, but I'm still not so sure. On the one hand, it's CBS; they must have checked this out. But would you have done it, Nick?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I grew up as an Italian. Like my parents came from Italy. We every year on the Queen's birthday weekend, as we were talking about before, off air, we butcher the pig and we make sausages. And my dad used to make the blood pudding and all that kind of stuff. So that kind of stuff doesn't bother me. And I was like, fingers crossed when I went out to play. I want a gross food challenge. Like I am going to be able to eat whatever. It never happened for me, but yeah, I would have loved that.
I must say, Nick, there are certain offal dishes that make me sort of wince.
Oh yeah, no, I don't eat it for fun, but I would eat it in this scenario.
There's a thing called coccoretti, which I must say I find rather disturbing. And when I remember once being given a sort of goat stew or goat soup. And you stir it, suddenly the eyeball pops up, and it's like something like out of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. You thought, you know, there it's done for entertainment. I've done that in real life, and you see your food looking up at you, and you think, no, this is not something I want to. I want to.
Yeah.
I can't even deal with, like, when I go to the store and they have, you know, the whole fish on ice.
Oh,
right?
really?
I can do that. Yeah. I don't have a problem with that.
I just don't want my dinner looking at me. I mean, it's what in the store.
I don't mind a whole salmon which has been, you know, you pick your salmon up, stick it in the Aga, pull it out a few minutes, half an hour later, and there it is, looking spectacular, looking sort of just floated up the river onto your plate, and it just seems, you know, it seems welcoming and quite pleasant. But I do find. There was the eyeball thing I found rather unattractive, and goat ear I found a bit unattractive because there's always a few hairs left on it. I don't really like that somehow.
Yeah, like I said,
and also I found it difficult eating my friends, you know, because they all have names.
Yeah, Tim named all of his goats, and then he ate them.
Well,
my grandmother said, my nonna said the first, you never name your rabbits because I'm going to eat all of them.
That is the general rule, like among farmers. And they have their pets, they have their dogs that they name, and then they have their other animals that they don't name.
I tended not to eat my friends. I tended to let them be eaten by other people. But I found the whole process slightly unattractive. But I just thought, this is my job, and you have to sort of steel yourself with these sort of things. And, but I'm quite sort of emotionally attached to animals. I think I see myself as a modern day St. Francis. I think. I think my spiritual home probably would be Assisi. And there's a Russian version who spends his time with bears called Seraphim. It's quite charming. There's a number of.
So I just realized we didn't even get into any of English literature. That we'll have to have Nick back another time. But I know that you have to go. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you making this time for us and defending Jesse.
I'm sorry, I do have to run off.
No, please just tell you want to tell people where to find you on social media, or do you want me to do it? I'll do it at the end if you're in a rush.
Oh no, that's fine. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Nick Iadanza. If you go on my Instagram, if you scroll back to my honeymoon picture, you'll find a picture of me jumping with the Samburu Warriors, which is something that you'll see later on in the season, Tim. So that's a nice little.
I think I'll go and I might see if Karen will let me watch your season in Australia.
Karen, I've ruined it. I'm sorry.
One of your chosen episodes.
It would actually be really interesting. We'll definitely think about it.
Just to see what can my future be as a teacher. But recently I spent my time teaching teachers how to teach, and this is far more worrying. But I've been doing it in another language in another country.
Right.
In Russia.
Tim, darling, I'm so sorry. Nick has to go. Let me just say goodbye to him. Nick, thank you again. Thanks so much.
No, thank you so much. This was really fun. I loved tripping down memory lane and providing a little bit of insight from an international version of Survivor as well.
Yeah, so, that was wonderful.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. What a great podcast. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Chat soon.
Bye, Nick.
All right.
It's just so we would just finish this off because we've not got very much to do. But sorry, I take it.
Yeah, no, he really has. Look, it's 11:30 at night.
Nick is lovely.
Nick is great. So we get to the Damu bar, right, which Damu means blood, and they all get to drink blood. And the thing I found, so the other moment that Nick didn't flag, but did you see the Frank painting his face with the blood?
Oh yes,
it's a callback to Scoopin'. I wonder if he did that on purpose.
I was so relieved. I was so relieved that that Clarence has stopped painting himself. I just think people are setting themselves up for a fall by calling attention to themselves like this. It's not attractive. It's not good. It's all very aggressive.
And actually, also in terms of
if he wants to camouflage himself, there's enough shit hanging around the place. He can cover himself in that. And that would make me feel so much happier.
All right. So the other thing I just wanted to flag here is that nobody has a problem with this, even Jesse, right? So Jesse, who could not keep water down the day before, has no problem drinking the blood, right? No. So in terms of of him voting her off because she's weak, I just wanted to flag this now because we get to tribal, right? There's a whole question about, is she really even sick anymore? But we get to the tiebreaker. They have to pick somebody from the other tribe. It's Kelly versus Linda, and this shot is bigger. There's no blood, and it's a race. And nobody had a problem. But yes, Linda apparently can chug a beer or can chug blood faster than Kelly. So Boran has now lost their third straight.
So I think there are issues with mythology here. Dracula and with religion.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, this is not a terribly inclusive challenge. And also I find it slightly offensive that what is considered that Survivor makes a game out of a staple diet.
But they always do it. Whenever they do the food challenges, it's always something that these people eat, but it's difficult for Americans to eat.
It seems patronizing.
I understand what you're saying. Right.
Yeah.
Let's see the whole idea thing, cultural appropriation. But on the other hand, if you know that you are taking something from a different culture, right, and you are treating it respectfully and with deference, I don't have a problem with it.
No, but they're not. They're treating it as a game and an moment. These people are in Africa. It's their duty. Mm-hmm. It's their duty to eat what they're given. This is the law of hospitality, acceptance and giving of hospitality. Not treat it as a game and an moment and let's do this at speed. That cow gave up its blood for us. And it's not as if the cow wasn't hurt. The cow winced at that moment. Yeah. Yes. And the cow
so this is part of a larger question I feel about relative morality and cultural appropriation and all of that, because again they're doing this because this is how these people live, and I did find that interesting. But in terms of them participating in it, like I said, I understand your point, but a lot of the things that they do on Survivor in general could probably be objected to on the same basis. I mean, this also is the issue that they do cause the cow pain. That's a different issue. But in terms of how they treat the cultures,
I do wonder if this was something, if this was part of the meal that Abraham gave to the three angels. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, no, I know that was not. No, you know how we know that it was not part of the meal, Tim? Think.
How do we know?
I was going to say no, but they didn't eat kosher back there. I was going to say because Jews don't drink blood.
Because they were already mixing milk and meat. The cow should not see its mother's. Whatever it is, I can't in my mind.
Right, so that's my point: is that they would not have been drinking.
They were not. They were not kosher at that point.
Right.
And,
no, they were not kosher at this point. But there is something in Jewish teaching. There is this idea, the kind of the canonization, if you will. No, that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob kept the entire Torah, even though it had not been given yet. For what it's worth.
Yes, but I'm aware of that, but it's okay. Point for debate off camera.
So Baran goes back to camp, trying to figure out what to do. And Clarence, and this is also interesting so rather than voting off, guy, they all kind of seem to decide that, it's going to be a woman, right? Because their girls are beating ours, right? Yes. And then Clarence also says something interesting. He says, it's what you need, but also what you like in terms of who to vote for. And that's Survivor in a nutshell, right? On the one hand, what does the tribe need? On the other hand, even the fact that you're talking about who do you like, this is something that I don't think really came to the forefront. I mean, obviously, it's always been an undercurrent in Survivor. But in terms of the social game and the importance of it, I feel Clarence was kind of ahead of his time by realizing, right, on an explicit level, that this is not just about what's good for the tribe; it's also about who do I like having around.
Yeah. But he's a natural team player. This is why it's so extraordinary that he was the first person to get into trouble. And I think Tom's insistence on voting for Clarence again tells us something rather worrying about Tom.
Oh, yeah. And like I said, I don't want to beat this dead horse because my problem is that I do like Tom as a TV character and as a person. But yes, he did these things, and looking at them through a 2020 lens, hopefully that he wouldn't do the same thing. if confronted with this.
I don't see Tom as a racist at all. I can't project that into.
No, I don't know. Not as a racist, but just in terms of being a little bit of a bully.
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the way he's treating Clarence, like I said, let's take the racial aspect out of it. He's just, kind of, I feel, setting himself up as, as a superior. He's going to teach him a lesson, right? Yeah. That is kind of the opposite of what you want to do in Survivor.
Wouldn't it have been so much more interesting for production if production had put Tom and Frank on the same tribe? That would have been so much more interesting. As opposed to sort of dishing them out into two separate tribes. And I know which one I would prefer, partly because of our common interest. But actually, I think Frank would be easier to get on with.
Well, I think Frank is very easy to get along if you live the way that Frank lives, right? If you are hustling 24 hours, you get along with Frank just fine, is my guess.
Tom, I think it's harder to crack as a nut, and I think Tom is going to have a difficult ride, or other people are going to have a difficult ride because of Tom. But eventually, Tom will mellow. Frank, I don't think will, but Frank will be easier to manage.
Okay, so this is another good prediction to just kind of put to the side that you're saying. Tom will mellow, right? Tom will start to get along better with people. Frank never will. Okay, that is a good observation to keep in mind. And I'm not saying it's a good one or a bad. I'm not saying if it's a good one or a bad one. I'm just flagging it here. They get to tribal council, and Jesse says, I never expected it to be so hard at first, right? Which is very reasonable, right? I think people they still have that. Even people who've seen 40 seasons of Survivor often don't really understand just how hard it is. But she says, I'm fine now. And I was going to say, and I believe her, because I had always remembered this episode that basically Jesse got voted out because she was sick. And that's not really the case, right? I mean, she definitely was sick, but once I saw her drinking the blood, I'm like, okay, if she can get that down, whatever her problems were, she's fine now.
Yeah.
Clearly, you would think that it would either be Big Kim, right, because she fell down, or Kelly because she was not able to win the blood drinking race, right?
Yeah.
But we still have Jesse going home. Again, we talked about because it's in groups and out groups, and we know that they like Kim. I guess they like Kelly, and they like Jesse less.
But this tribe is voting in a very strange way, because I would have expected the first vote to have been for Clarence, and I would have expected this vote to have been for Kelly.
What would have been the second one for?
For Kelly.
Again,
It is Kelly.
Just based on, right.
Who failed the challenge.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly makes sense that, your initial reaction is going to be to vote for the person who stuffed it up.
Yeah. Why would you?
It doesn't.
I don't understand. Why would you vote for Jessie? It doesn't really make very much sense, because she's just starting to come into her own.
Right.
She's now no longer sick.
Right.
Look at that background. Do they not think of the background?
I think it's partly, first impressions are lasting ones, right? That they, when the tribe got to know her, and certainly, and even through, day 4, she was sick, right? And that's why people are kind of like on cats when they're on Survivor, right? They try to hide any sign of illness or weakness. Because if the tribe sees it, right, it's a very natural reaction to say, well, we got to vote somebody off, right? It might as well be her. Yeah. And I do think that just the fact that she was not clearly in the group, right? And even the fact that she was very kind to Clarence. I loved her conversation with Clarence at the beginning of the episode when she says, and she kind of made it clear that, maybe he shouldn't have done that, but, it was, dude, you're going to be fine. And then, of course, Lex and Tom make it clear that he's not fine. But if nothing else, she was kind to him, and given that he is kind of persona non grata, right, that might also have come into it. And Jesse says something.
So you think that she was voted out because of her link with Clarence, and this was to punish Clarence.
Combined with her weakness. Yeah. Again, and what percentage of each count, was it 90-10 or 50-50, right? Who knows? And obviously I'm speculating, I wasn't there, but those were the two things that I think would have stood out. If you're looking for why did they vote Jesse off, right? What do you think, Tim? Why do you think that she went home?
I think at the moment Tom is very much in control, and he's culling the herd, or the tribe. Actually, a herd of goats is not a herd of goats; it's a tribe of goats.
Oh, so it is a tribe.
It is a tribe. So he's culling the tribe, and
I just had a T-shirt idea. Continue.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, I'm just saying I have a T-shirt. I have a T-shirt idea about goats and Survivor and tribes.
There we are. You see,
I'll have to workshop that. Yeah.
Yeah, workshop. I've still got to design a T-shirt for you, because I promised I would. But have to get one done. No, it's so I think Tom is seeing himself as the goat herder who's doing his thing, and I understand that, but I think he's making the wrong decisions. I think Jesse would have been a useful person to have kept.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I love Big Kim, and as much as I always rail about the fact that the older women, older people, and especially women, tend to get sent home earlier, the fact that Kim is, she's 57, because on Survivor now, you're old if you're like over 30 or 35, right? There are many people at that point, many 35-year-olds can keep up with young people. Many fewer 57-year-olds can do it. Even the fact that she's on Survivor and she finished the challenge, she was just slower than everybody else, right? But I couldn't be too upset if they had decided to vote her off, right? But I'm glad that they didn't.
Well, we have to see what happens in the next episode, because if this tribe lose again, this tribe is just getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and that doesn't say a lot for the merge. That it's making the game look very predictable.
Yeah, when you start with the same tribe losing 4 challenges in a row, it's it can certainly lead to because if we get to the merge, right, with we've discussed this already, right, with a big difference in numbers, right, then Sambur is just probably going to bulldoze Baran. So yeah, it is something that you should be concerned about. But it is only 2 episodes, right? So we will have to see what happens. So anything else on this episode, Tim?
No. This is where we this is really it. Every episode we do, I keep feeling I want to spend a few minutes introducing you to the delights of British pantomime, but I never seem to get the opportunity to sort of slot it in. So we
have it now.
We'll hope next time.
We can do it now. No, I'm not in a rush now that Nick is gone.
Really?
Yeah, please.
Because I think
I have an idea. I have an idea. Let's tell people. Let me just tell people, social media. Tell people what's going on NSFW, and then we could talk about pantomime. So anybody who is not,
I think what we'll do is we'll flag pantomime as a subject to bring up in the next session.
All right, and I guess I have a research project to learn about British.
You have a research, indeed, absolutely.
Because I do have a history in mind, but my understanding is that when you talk about a British pantomime, you're not talking about the people with their faces painted white.
Absolutely not. We're talking about a lot of noise, and a lot of innuendo.
All right,
and that's it really. So you nothing to do with Commedia dell'arte, though that's where it begins. But yeah. So let's do it. Let's.
So we will talk about. So okay. So Tim, tell people where they can find you on social media, or you know what? I'm sorry, people. I'm not awake today. Given that we are just talking about what we're going to do next week, I might as well mention that our guest next week is going to be once again Elaine Stott from Survivor Out of the Idols. Yes, we seem to have we now have a fit. Well, we almost did it there's an idea in Judaism that if you do something 3 times, right, it becomes a rule. So we almost made it to have Elaine be on episode 2 for the 3rd time, but I really did want Nick to talk about Jesse. So we will have Elaine, but Elaine always comes on for an early episode in these seasons.
Excellent.
So we will discuss that, and then she will learn about British pantomime as well.
That would be very jolly.
Okay.
Right. You'll have to prompt me, otherwise we'll just go off in some sort of strange tangent, and I will forget what I'm doing anyway. But it was such a joy having Nick today. So I can be found on Zontul Films Limited, ZONTULFILMS LTD, or ZON, because I'm becoming more American as I get exposed to this strange hybrid culture across the pond. And in fact, I was saying to Nick, if there's a little film about the beginning of Milton's Paradise Lost.
Yeah, it really is lovely. Tim is frozen
at the moment.
But yeah, no, I will send that to Nick as well. It really is.
I'm
you were frozen, now you're back.
I'm so sorry about being frozen. I'm in a slightly different place, and I think probably my internet provided by Virgin Media.
Yeah, we'll troubleshoot after the show because
So what else? I can also be found on Instagram, Professor_Tim_Wilson, and Twitter, Prof_Tim_Wilson. And my cat is coming to see me.
We're gonna have a cat sighting.
No,
okay, and I am at Karen Talks a Lot on Twitter. It's the best way to find me if you want to get announcements of what the shows, etc., things like that. So next week, now this is interesting, people, because we are going to be dropping the show on Tuesday, the 22nd, but we are taping it 5 days earlier on the 17th. So let me beam myself into the future and what will be coming up on Reality NSFW. Well, we are still covering the challenge on MTV. We have 2 weekly shows. So I do not know who our guests are for next week. I know that what was then last Thursday, the previous episode, we have 2 I am not making any. This is why I don't do shows when I'm tired, people. My apologies. We do 2 shows of the challenge each week. On Wednesday night, immediately after the show, we go live with Lauren Pratt and Alex Trias. These are 2 new podcasters to NSFW. They really know the challenge and they're just kicking ass. So we're so proud of them. And then on Thursday night, we have the Experts podcast with Jonny and Zack and with Marie Rhoda she has been on, I believe, 5 seasons of the challenge, plus a couple of other shows. She's just amazing. And then for our patrons, the only other show that I am currently covering is Australian Survivor Season 2. And we watch that every week with the patrons. And then we also do a Q&A where you can ask Jonny and Matt and me and Zack anything you want. So if that is something that might interest you, please consider checking out ad-free NSFW to check out all the things that we can do. If you become a patron, and if we get, I think it's another 60 some patrons. If we get to 200 patrons, Jonny is going to get a tattoo of Matt's face on, I believe it's going to be his left butt cheek. So again, if you want to see Jonny Fairplay in pain and have him live out the rest of his life with a tattoo of Matt on his butt, please consider becoming a patron just for 1 month. It will be worth it just to see the video of Jonny screaming in pain as he gets the tattoos. So please consider that. And we are looking forward to seeing you. I will not be seeing you, but you will be seeing me on the 22nd. And on the 29th, we will see you at our usual time of 10 noon Eastern, 5 p.m. GMT. Did I say that right? On Reality NSFW Rewind. We've lost Tim, but
no, I'm still here.
Oh, Tim's back. Tim is back. Was there something you wanted to say?
No. That's lovely. Thank you.
I thought you had frozen on us. All right. Bye. See you on the 29th live with Elaine Stott. Bye, everybody.